So former President Trump is promising to appeal the verdict after being found guilty on 34 counts last week. But the conviction proving profitable for the Trump campaign as it raises nearly $53 million just in the hours immediately after the verdict. Much of that was from small and first-time donors. Maria spoke with Eric Trump on Sunday Morning Futures on the updated trial. Watch.
What have you seen in the way of money raising? I spoke with President Trump yesterday. He said it's nearly $200 million. That is astounding. Is that number correct? Where does that number come from?
Well, this might be a little inside information, but as I was leaving my house about 37 seconds ago, I asked my wife, what are we up to now? And she said, just in terms of small dollar, we're well over $70 million. This is $21 donations, $43 donations, right? Small dollar donations. If you add the large dollar donations to it, you're over $200 million, but you're over $70 million. And by the way, Maria,
wow.
30% of those people have never been seen before by a political party, right?
Joining me now is Florida Congressman Michael Waltz. He's a member of the House Oversight, Armed Services, and Foreign Affairs Committees, as well as the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. He's also a retired Green Beret and National Guard colonel. Congressman, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So I want to follow up on the donation issue that Eric Trump brought up with Maria, because, and that came from Laura, because that was the small donor haul that came in immediately after. But the rest of it seems to be banged up by big money donors. We're talking millionaires and billionaires that have now been reportedly over the weekend flocking to the former president's side to say, we are going to back you. My question to you, does donations and does funding guarantee you a win in November? How is Donald Trump going to win in November?
Well, it doesn't guarantee you a win, but it is the resources to get your message out. And why that number is so significant, of course, the big dollar donors are important, but there's campaign limits. There's maximums on what they can give. The small dollar donors, particularly the 30% that have never given before, those were people that are on the sidelines, and study after study shows once you donate, you're going to vote in that direction. And for somebody that gave $15, $20, they can give over and over and over again before they hit those limits. So that $70 million can replicate itself again and again. And how's he going to win? He's going to run on what did America look like a couple of years ago in terms of crime, the economy, the border, and the world? The Middle East alone, ISIS was defeated, Iran was broke, and we had the Abraham Accords breaking out compared to what it is today. And the contrast couldn't be more clear. And I think Americans are absolutely going to vote to go back to restoring keeping America great.
Well, and run on the economy, run on where the economy was under a Trump presidency and a Trump administration. But let me ask you this. Kellyanne Conway was on Fox News over the weekend, and she made the point, her advice to former President Trump would be, move on from the verdict. He's going to appeal it. We know that. Let the lawyers do the appeal. But instead of going on the campaign trail and talking about the grievances of the New York trial and the other indictments against him, talk about what really matters to the average voter. Talk about their wallet, their gas prices, their grocery prices. Can he do that, Congressman? Can he move on and just focus on what people care about to get himself reelected?
Well, look, I agree with Kellyanne that these economic issues, the fact that they're hurting, the fact that you can buy, for somebody on a fixed income, 30% less groceries than you could just a few years ago, are the things that matter the most. But at the same time, the Democrats and this incredibly biased, corrupt judge isn't going to let President Trump move on. I mean, you've got sentencing just a few days before the convention. But look, at the end of the day, it is those kitchen table issues that will matter. President Trump had policies that worked and made people's lives better. Biden can't even talk about. I mean, they stopped talking about Bidenomics. It's so bad. And I'm watching congressional Democrats run away from them and not even mention them in their campaign. So she's right. It's policies that matter the most. But this New York out-of-control judicial system isn't going to let President Trump move on.
Well, but the appeal, and to your point, the appeal process won't happen until after the election because of the timing, the court system. But on the other side of this, what we are seeing now is many of the Biden surrogates are coming out, and I'll point to Adam Schiff yesterday on another network. How many times can you say convicted felon? And it seems that their mantra now, their rallying cry behind President Biden is, how many times do you say convicted felon in one interview, and make sure that that is your messaging. Avoid the failures of the Biden administration when it comes to the economy. Right. Avoid the bad news. Avoid the issue of Afghanistan and that disaster and the pullout from Afghanistan in August of 2021. Focus on convicted felon. You and your group have got to fight back against that. How do you do it?
Well, yeah, look, I think this is going to backfire on them. It is backfiring on them. And at the end of the day, on our side, angry voters are motivated voters. Angry voters are motivated donors. And when you can't talk about policy, you're not going to motivate your side. People are much more apt to turn out for something they believe in rather than a negative on the other side. And on the Democrat side, what do they have to believe in? What's the case for another 5 years of the last 3 years? There isn't one. Look, at the end of the day, I think you're going to see voter after voter say, yeah, I don't like maybe some of the things he says or what have you, but I love what he did. My life was better. My family was safer. The world was more stable. And this is why we're going to have a victory in November.
Yeah, well, we also have heard that the former president last Thursday night in particular was in good spirits after the conviction, the night of the conviction, literally 3 hours after that conviction and those convictions came down. So, and I know that you were here in New York and with the former president. I do want to move on to something else that's important to you. The chief foreign policy advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Netanyahu had, quote, agreed to a framework deal proposed by mediators for a potential ceasefire, but also calling the proposal flawed and in need of more work. Doubts are now growing about Israel's stance on this proposal. President Biden made a speech Friday. He claims Israel put forth a three-part plan that would lead to a permanent ceasefire. But just this morning, we had this top Israeli official telling NBC News that Biden's description was, quote, not accurate. The official also denying that Biden's assertion that the IDF would withdraw fully from Gaza. What do you make of all of this? Because, the biggest question here is, and I know that there's a lot of movement in getting Netanyahu to come to Congress, to address Congress here in this country. And I think that should happen. But I want to get your take on all of this and this back and forth on a ceasefire. It doesn't seem to me that Israel is going to do anything unless the hostages are home and Gaza is eliminated. Excuse me, that Hamas is eliminated. My apologies.
Well, at the end of the day,
Hamas.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I mean, this is a lousy deal for Israel. Biden's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's saying this is an Israeli proposal, but yet Israel's got to agree to it, to their own proposal, I guess. I mean, he literally said all the IDF are going to be out of Gaza. All Palestinians can go back to their homes. I guess kumbaya, everything's back to the way it was. The day after has to be without Hamas, yet acknowledges Hamas will still be there and says, well, don't worry, they're not capable of doing what they did after October 7th. And in exchange for that, you only get a few of your hostages out. The thing that was most disturbing to me was he said in phase 2, as long as negotiations are continuing, the IDF will stay out of Gaza. I mean, they'll drag it out forever, Cheryl. And meanwhile, what he didn't say was Iran. All roads lead back to Iran. As long as they're flush with cash, they will be pumping arms, weapons, training and resources to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and to the Houthis. And essentially, what Biden is saying is, let's get this tamped down through the election because this is all about placating his base. And if we have another October 7th down the road, well, we'll worry about it then.
Congressman Michael Waltz, thank you so much for being here. It's always great to speak with you, sir.